Back in 2012, a year after the Marineford War was animated, Ichiro Oda claimed that the final saga will be so amazing that it makes Marineford look like nothing. According to Oda, Marineford was just a side trip for him and he didn't expect it to be so popular. Yes, the Marineford where Akainu takes Ace to Dunkin' Donuts. The Marineford where Whitebeard shows us why he's the biggest Chad in One Piece. The Marineford where Shanks stops an entire war and where Blackbeard eats a second devil fruit. Now, to me, Marineford is one of, if not the best arc in anime and manga that I've ever witnessed. And to say that the final saga will make it look like nothing is literally insanity. When I heard about this, I literally thought, ain't no way that's even possible. How can anything be that much better than Goatford? Oda's probably just exaggerating. And then I actually thought about it and realized Oda is telling the truth. I started thinking about every goddamn thing that has to happen in the final war and started realizing that it's gonna be insane. I really do think Marineford was just a teaser of what's to happen, since we're probably gonna get some of the same cast of characters in this war plus the entire Straw Hat crew, the Gorosei, Emu, the Revolutionaries, and Luffy's alliances. I mean, the first arc is probably gonna only be the beginning of the war and nowhere near the climax, and we're already seeing all 5 Gorosei fight plus the Ancient Kingdoms reveal. Egghead is only the start, and Oda said that the final war will be the longest war in One Piece history, meaning that it'll probably be hundreds of chapters long. So what's gonna make this final saga so good? What's gonna happen in this final war that makes Marineford call it daddy? Well, that's where we move on to the first arc after Egghead, which is Elbaf. If you've seen my channel before, then you know that I believe Elbaf will end up being one of the greatest arcs ever drawn in manga. I believe that although the final war started at the end of Wano and Egghead, Elbaf will be the arc where the war really takes place. The first reason for this would be because it's in a place called Warland. This makes me think that a good chunk of the final war will happen there. Secondly, Elbaf is known to be the land of warriors and it's considered to be the strongest country in the entire world. I think Oda would be wasting the Elbaf giants if he didn't put them in battle. Now, the way I think the war will happen in Elbaf depends on how Egghead ends. Assuming that the Straw Hats do escape and go to Elbaf, I believe that the world government will follow them there. The reason for this is because they don't want anyone who's tied to Vegapunk and Egghead leave. We see that Saturn ordered Marines to slaughter Egghead citizens that were leaving the island. Keep in mind that these people had nothing to do with Vegapunk's conspiracy on the Void Century. If you also add in the fact that a Vegapunk, probably Lilith, will escape with them, there's almost no way the government doesn't go after them. On top of this is the one time the government can't predict where the Straw Hats are going. In the New World, there's usually 3 different islands you can go to, however this time it just seemed pretty obvious that Luffy's heading to Elbaf with the Elbaf pirates. Another motive for the world government to follow Luffy is the fact that he's the sun god. Saturn literally said, "Those who study the secrets of the world, those who possess the blood of a lost people, those who have awakened an ancient god, this island is full of inconvenient people who must be eradicated." He makes it pretty clear that he doesn't want Luffy to be around, so I think he'll try to kill him. We also know that the Holy Knights are people that aren't afraid to take action, so we can only expect them to go after anyone who's messing with them. And now, during the Elbaf arc, I feel like the villains will actually be the world government and not an Elbaf warrior. A lot of people think Loki could be some sort of anti-hero, however, I personally don't think he'll be a full-on villain. I don't think Shanks would allow an evil person to rule Elbaf. I think the Straw Hats will have to protect and help Prince Loki, just like how they helped countless other princes and princesses defend their country. As stated in my Elbaf video, I think there's a good chance Green Bull shows up since he's the one admiral we haven't really got much of yet. It'll also fit his character since he worships these celestial dragons and would be the one admiral who would actually want to take down the Straw Hats. I also think we could expect Gorosei to show up and even Holy Knights. Although some of the Holy Knights are definitely going to be fighting Dragon, I can see some of them going out to fight Luffy as well. We may even see Figureland show up to Elbaf, considering that it would be the best arc to reveal everything about Shanks. Just like how Saturn, the Gorosei most connected to Vegapunk and Bonnie, showed up to Egghead, we can expect Figureland, the man most connected to Shanks, to show up on Elbaf. I mean, would it really be a Shanks arc without any of his lore? That also leads me to my next point, which is the fact that Shanks will be in Elbaf. However, before we talk about that, we first need to discuss how he's probably going to be fighting Blackbeard right now. Shanks makes it pretty clear that he's currently on a hunt for Blackbeard, so as long as he can find out where he is in the world, I'm sure he'll be fighting him right when Egghead ends. It's also interesting that Oda said in Jump Fest 2024 that in 2024, it'll finally happen at last. The battle between that character and that character may lead to unexpected results. Although I could be wrong when you consider that the only matchup he's really setting up right now in the manga is Shanks versus Blackbeard. I think he's talking about them. Now, I personally don't think Shanks will die to Blackbeard at this point in the story. If they do end up fighting right after Egghead ends, I think it'll be a very close match between the two. I think Shanks will survive Blackbeard because I just can't see Oda killing him off without having him in a full arc. I also don't see him killing Shanks off before Luffy reunites with him. When these two fight, I hope for a couple of questions to be answered. First off, how did Blackbeard give Shanks his scar? Secondly, why does Shanks fear Blackbeard so much, and how did he always know his true nature? Third, why does Shanks hate him so much? I hope Oda at least gives us something to their lore, even if it's just a little bit. I also hope we see just how strong these dudes are, since I'd expect them to actually go all out for once. I know a lot of people think Blackbeard will kill Shanks whenever they fight, but I think they could fight again. I think Blackbeard could kill Shanks later on in the story. I mean, Blackbeard is a D-Clan member, and if Shanks is a celestial dragon, then it's probably Blackbeard's fate to kill him. Like, Blackbeard is described to be Shanks' polar opposite. Their entire world values are the complete opposite, since we see that Shanks maintains the balance of the world while Blackbeard wants to own it. I also wonder if Blackbeard killing Shanks is a parallel to what happened at God Valley. Maybe Figureland was the one who killed Rocks, and Blackbeard might return the favor to the next generation. Oda also says that Shanks and Blackbeard's relationship will have consequences on the world. I believe their matchup will lead to utter chaos, since it will be the spark of Shanks not keeping everything in balance. Him trying to kill a Yonko is the opposite of what he usually does, which is stop wars and prevent fighting. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about Blackbeard killing Shanks. Will it happen, or will Shanks end up surviving the war? Now, I think the fight might end around the time that Shanks finds out that Elbaf is being raided by the Marines. Knowing how Shanks is, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't allow his friends to be attacked without helping them. I think he's gonna show up to Elbaf later on in the arc, and it'll be a legendary scene. I think he might show up right when the Straw Hats and Elbaf warriors need help. It would be pretty cool to see him meet Luffy when Luffy is fighting in Gear 5. I don't necessarily think this has to happen though, because no matter how it goes down, Shanks and Luffy meeting will be amazing. Also, Shanks fighting side by side with Luffy could be the ultimate way to show Luffy's finally a great pirate. Keeping up with Shanks would prove it. Also, this would be where Usopp and Yasop meet, which would also be amazing to see. All of these dudes fighting off Gorosei and Holy Knights leads me to another point of why the final war will be peak, which is the fact that the Gorosei and Imu will be the main villains. The final saga will most likely parallel Dressrosa and Skypiea, since the main villain is considered a god who tricked an entire people. Now, just like how Dofi's and Enel's men fought throughout the entire saga, I think Imu's men will do the same. Imu's 5 elders could possibly even parallel Dofi's 5 seeds. I think the Gorosei and Holy Knights will be fighting everyone, and the craziest thing about this is the fact that if you get one Gorosei to show up on your island, you could potentially end up fighting all 5 of them, since they have the ability to summon like meteorites. I mean, Dressrosa might really parallel the final saga, since it also had Blackbeard pirates, revolutionaries, admirals, and the Straw Hat fleet. All of these types of people will also be present within the final saga. That also leads me to my next point, which is the fact that Oda said that the Straw Hat fleet will eventually cause a great incident of historic proportions. I believe that this has to do with what they'll do in the final saga, and I believe that once they find out that Luffy is being attacked by the world government, they're all gonna come and help him. The Straw Hats will probably end up reuniting with Hydrogen on Elbaf, and this could potentially be the arc where they shout for their help. I think it's either gonna be on Elbaf or Mary Joa. As I said in my Elbaf video, I would love to see what would happen if Shanks and Bart met. Now, I think that once Elbaf is defended and once the arc is wrapping up, I think there's a good chance Vivi reunites with the Straw Hats as well. If she knows Luffy is in Elbaf, she'll probably follow him there and finally join the crew. She'll trust the land of Elbaf since she's met Dory and Broggy at Little Garden, and she'll probably feel the need to go back to being a Straw Hat since the world government is trying to execute her. Once she tells Luffy everything about how they're trying to kill her and how they already killed Cobra, Luffy will end up pausing his journey to go and fight the Celestial Dragons. I feel like he's gonna go fight them because he'll want to avenge Cobra and protect his friends. I mean, we already saw how he was willing to raid Mary Joa when he found out Vivi was missing, so imagine what he's gonna do when he finds out the truth of what happened. Now, this pretty much leads me to what I think will happen in the Mary Joa arc. Now, before we get into that, I think there's a chance the Straw Hats get the final road Poneglyph sometime before Mary Joa. It honestly all depends on who the man marked by flames is. If it ends up being anyone not named Dragon, I could see them meeting this man sometime between Egghead and Mary Joa. However, if it is Dragon or a world government member, then I could see the Straw Hats getting the final Poneglyph during the Mary Joa arc. I can see the Straw Hats having the location of the One Piece but then pausing their journey to help their friends. Also, do you guys think there will be any other arcs besides Elbaf, Mary Joa, and Raftail? The way the story is going right now, I really only see these being the final 3 arcs. Let me know in the comments if you think there'll be a Lodestar arc, Fuloled arc, or any others. Now, for the Mary Joa arc, I think this will be the arc where Luffy finally meets his dad. Knowing how Dragon started an all-out war with the Celestial Dragons, I would think this would be his arc. He also seems to have a past with the Marines, so we may also see him fighting admirals like Akainu. I think this will be the arc where we learn everything about the Monkey family, from who Luffy's mother is, Dragon's entire story, and Dragon's relationship with Garp. I also think that we're gonna see a lot of Dragon and the Revolutionaries during the Elbaf arc in between Elbaf chapters, kind of like how we saw Garp and Kobe in between Egghead chapters. I think this may be when Oda reveals Dragon's abilities and when he shows us the beginning of warfare for the Revolutionaries. I think during Elbaf, the Revolutionaries fight will only be getting started, and by the time Mary Jo comes into play, it'll be the climax of the war. I think the Revolutionaries will feel forced to take action on Mary Joa itself, since if the Gorosei end up stealing the power plant for the Mother Flame, they could potentially just wipe out any island that they want. Dragon might have to go straight to Mary Joa since that's the one place Imu will never destroy. I think Mary Joa will be the most insane One Piece arc ever because I think there's gonna be so many people there at play. I think it's gonna be the next Marineford, except replace the Whitebeard fleet with the Revolutionaries and add the Gorosei, Imu, and the Celestial Dragons. I think everyone else that was at Marineford will also be at the Mary Joa arc. Well, except Donut and the Deadbeard fleet. One of the ways it's gonna be even better than Marineford is because we're also gonna get Shanks and Blackbeard for the entire arc, rather than just the ending. I also think pretty much anyone concerned with fighting the Celestial Dragons will pull up. This includes Garp, Law, and pretty much every Will of D member. I think the Will of D's fate to bring a storm and be the natural enemy of the Celestial Dragons will truly come into play in this arc. I believe it's their fate to destroy everything the Celestial Dragons created for the past 900 years. This means that Law and Blackbeard will also be a major factor in this arc. Blackbeard will probably go for a similar reason that Rox went to God Valley. He'll probably go to become the king of the world and to take the world for himself. We've seen Blackbeard talking about the throne in a way where it seems like he wants it for himself. We also know he parallels Rox, who's a guy that tried to do the same thing. I also think there's a chance that Blackbeard will want Imu's demon powers for his third fruit. Knowing how Blackbeard only wants the most powerful abilities known to mankind, I think this is where he'll end up gaining even more power. It'll be a parallel to Marineford and possibly even to God Valley, since Rox may have eaten an insane devil fruit right before his end. Now for Law, I think he might go there because he wants to find the meaning behind his checkered fate. I think it's simply just his destiny to defeat the Celestial Dragons, just like how his Luffy is in Blackbeard's. Somehow Saul's and Vivi's fate will also tie them into this arc. Another character I expect to be there is Buggy and the Cross Guild. I think they're gonna go there to steal the final road poneglyph from someone. If they hear that Luffy or somebody already has the location of Laugh-Tale, Buggy might think it best to steal it from them before they can actually go. I think Cross Guild will only need one more poneglyph to get, since I'd assume them to easily get the other 3. Buggy already knows where the road poneglyphs are located, so he should be able to find them pretty fast. Marshall D. Preach actually told me the funniest way this could happen, which would be through a cover story. Imagine while in Elbaf, there's a cover story of Buggy and the Cross Guild finding the road poneglyphs. Remember, these guys are specifically trying to avoid warfare and are trying to get the One Piece as easily as possible. Knowing how Buggy already knows Momo and the Minks pretty well, I think they'll gladly give him a copy of the road poneglyph after he parties with them or charms them up. Seeing Mihawk's and Croc's reactions to this would be hilarious. Now for Whole Cake's road poneglyph, I don't think they'd have much trouble getting it since Big Mom isn't even around anymore. I don't think they'd shy away from getting this one after they already got the other 2. I think Buggy will lastly go to Fishman Island only to realize that the final road poneglyph isn't there, and will then conclude that they have to steal it from one of the other Yonko. Them seeing that literally everyone is going to Mary Joa will leave them with only one option, to go there too. This would be pretty damn funny considering that the one thing Mihawk and Croc didn't want to do was fight Blackbeard, Shanks, and Luffy all at once. This might be the arc where we finally see Mihawk go all out and where we find out a bit of his past. For the final major characters, I think we could definitely expect Akainu, some admirals, and hundreds of thousands of marine soldiers just like Marineford. There will also be thousands of random Mary Joa knights. We can also probably expect every previous warlord to show up in some way. There will probably also be the Seraphim and Pacifistas. I also think all of the ancient weapons will be present in this arc, which is something that I'll be getting into later on. And now that I explained explained everyone that will be there. Now I need to explain how I think Mary Joa will actually go down. So first off, I think it's gonna be a war where everyone is fighting each other. For example, this may be the arc where the Straw Hats don't only fight the world government, but also where they fight the Blackbeard pirates. We're also probably gonna see Blackbeard versus Shanks go down once again. Unlike Marineford, I don't think it's simply gonna be Marine versus Pirate. I think it's more so gonna be Marine versus Marine, Marine versus Pirate, Pirate versus Pirate, and Celestial Dragons versus everyone. We could potentially see Aokiji versus Marines in this arc, and also Aokiji betraying the Blackbeard Pirates. For the main matchups, I hope to see Dragon versus the Gorosei. I feel like Imu will mainly fight Luffy and Blackbeard, which will leave the Gorosei up to everyone else. I think Sabo has a good chance to fight them a little too, but I think his main matchup will be Akainu. The rest of the revolutionaries will probably be busy with the Holy Knights. For the Straw Hats, I hope to see Zoro fighting Gorosei Noozjudo, Shuryu, and maybe even Mihawk. I actually think Mihawk and Zoro will go down in the Raftail arc, but we could see them at least clash in this arc too. I'll expand more on this when we get to Raftail. It would also be really cool to see one of the Gorosei bring up how Zoro reminds him of the greatest horseman from the Void Century, Ryuma. For Sanji, I could see him fighting Crocodile, Lafitte, Doflamingo, Ivankov, and one of the Gorosei. Usopp will probably fight Buggy and Van Augur. Who knows, Buggy and Usopp may even become friends in this arc as they both try to avoid as much combat as they can. I hope Jinbei fights the Celestial Dragon since they're the ones mainly responsible for the racism. I hope Robin also fights them. Frankie will probably be fighting a ton of people while in his mecha form. Who knows, he may even fight alongside the Iron Giant. The other Straw Hats will probably be doing something, but as of right now, I don't really know what. The Straw Hat fleet will probably be fighting the Mary Joa Knights, the Holy Knights, and the Marines. They will fight anyone who is against Luffy and anyone who's responsible for Luffy being mad. Elbaf Giants will also probably be fighting there, fighting anyone against Luffy and Shanks. I think Cross Guild might not fight as much as everyone else since they probably don't care about the war. They're mainly gonna be there for their own reasons, however, I could see them getting dragged into it. I can see Buggy wanting to quickly get the Poneglyphs and leave, but then being tempted by sitting on the throne. I think at some point, Buggy will actually sit on it and become the king of the world. I also think that just like Marineford, there will be transponder snails showing the world everything. The Celestial Dragons probably won't want this, but Morgans probably will. He'll probably view this as the most insane news event of all time and will force his way in with cameras. I think that just like how Buggy made his name known in Marineford, I think he'll probably try to have a Cross Guild promotion in this arc. I think there's also a good chance, by either by coincidence or on purpose, the entire world will see Buggy sitting on Imu's throne. I think people would then think of him as a king of the world or as something completely ridiculous. I think that Mihawk and Croc will end up hunting down Marines themselves. The entire Cross Guild will probably end up doing this with them since they either worship Buggy or want money from killing Marines. The Marine soldiers will probably have to mainly face off against these dudes. A couple of the Marines that may end up betraying the government are gonna be Garp, Fujitora, and Kobe. It would be cool to see Fujitora fight Green Bull. I also think Garp will protect his nephew, unlike how he did nothing at Marineford. I think he's actually gonna help his family this time and will end up being the one to take down Figureland. Knowing the two's history at God Valley, I think this would be the perfect matchup. It seems like Garp always wanted to fight Figureland but never could due to his status. I think Kobe could end up fighting Aokiji or some evil Marines. He will also probably fight off evil pirates like the Blackbeard crew. Now, for Imu, I think he's gonna be completely exposed to the world in this arc. This will probably happen from Morgans. It's also gonna happen since he's probably gonna go all out against everyone. Imu will probably be so goddamn strong that everyone gets a little moment with him. I can see his abilities being so OP that he threatens everyone's life at some point. Kind of like how it took a bunch of dudes to fight Kaido, I think the same thing could happen here. I think his main opponents will be Luffy, Blackbeard, and Law. I think Blackbeard will try to kill Imu because he wants to get his abilities. He'll also probably fight him because he stands in his way of becoming the king of the world. I think the checkered fate that Law always talks about is actually to kill Imu. I think Imu became immortal from the Eternal Youth operation, and I think only Law will be able to make Imu mortal once again. I think Law's awakening will somehow allow him to reverse the Eternal Youth operation on Imu. The tragedy here could be that Law might end up dying while doing this, since we know that the user dies after giving someone Eternal Youth. The reversed effect might do the same thing. We also know that Dofi says that he needs Law's fruit to get the sacred treasure of Mary Joa. I think that Law Law's destiny is to find the sacred treasure of Mary Joa, just like how it's Luffy's destiny to find the treasure of the One Piece. No matter what happens, Law's fate most likely concludes at Mary Joa. I think that as Law makes Imu immortal, Luffy will end up being the one to really defeat Imu. I'd assume this to be Luffy's most absurd fight yet. I also can't wait to see the reveal of what Imu's fruit looks like. I'm also sure we'll end up learning of Imu's backstory here and learning why he wanted to become the king of the world for eternity. I'm not too sure if we'll get Joy Boy's reveal here though, or if we'll get it at Laugh Tale. Either way, I think there's gonna be a big flashback for Imu and the Gorosei in this arc. I also think that there could be a similar scene to the Arlong Park scene where Luffy gets mad after seeing everything that Nami went through. I think there's a good chance Luffy will see all the slavery that's going on underneath and inside Mary Joa and will end up becoming extremely mad. I honestly hope he, or at least we, see a scene where Arlong is a slave. Arlong is like one of the only characters that we haven't seen since his arc, and I think Oda's saving him for a very sad and deep moment. I think that as Luffy defeats Imu, he destroys all of Mary Joa with him, because he just can't stand the idea of the place. He's going to finally do the one thing everyone's wanted to do for the past 800 years. He'll free all the slaves and live up to his nickname, the God of Liberation. I hope there's a scene where the slaves start crying out of joy as they witness the sun god Nika firsthand. They'll realize that Nika is real and not just a made up tale. I think that as Luffy defeats Imu, Blackbeard will actually murder the guy as he feels tempted to take his abilities for himself. I think that as Imu falls, all the other celestial dragons will also have fallen by that point. When this happens, I think Blackbeard will momentarily become king of the world. I think he'll actually accomplish what Rox was trying to do. Just like how at the end of Marineford, Blackbeard caused complete chaos, I think he'd do the same thing here. Notice how when he obtains Whitebeard's power, he says stuff like, "I'm invincible, I'm the greatest, my era begins!" And even, I feel like I can control the whole world. I think after taking Imu's powers, he'll be even more cocky and even more violent. I think Shanks and Blackbeard might go down once again, and this time, Blackbeard might actually kill Shanks. If Shanks were to ever die in the story, I think it'd be in the Mary Joa arc and to Blackbeard. It'd be crazy because Shanks would be defeated alongside his blood family. I think this could be the reason Luffy fights Blackbeard. However, if Shanks doesn't die, Luffy will still have to fight him because Blackbeard probably messed with his friends connected to the ancient weapons. He'd also have to fight him because Blackbeard is literally the biggest threat to exist. Just like how Garp defeated the Rocks, his grandson will defeat the Blackbeard pirates and will end them once and for all. Now, as all of this happens, there's one other major plot point that I see happening. That would be the destruction of the world by the ancient weapons. We see people who learn the truth of the world talk about a future war that would destroy the world. Whitebeard says that when the Great War happens, the whole world will be flipped upside down. Odin says that the massive war will split the seas themselves. I think this term of splitting the seas is meant to be taken literally, as I think the Red Line's destruction will split all the seas. I think only the ancient weapons have the ability to do this, maybe along with Joy Boy's help. It's said that the ancient weapons have the power to destroy the world, and I think this is what the world government really fears. I think they really fear the Red Line being destroyed, since if that happens, Mary Joa will also be destroyed. There's also probably a reason Mary Joa is placed on top of the Red Line, and it probably has something to do with the Red Line being the best border. I mean, the first thing we see when entering the Grand Line is Laboon trying to destroy the Red Line, so I think it'd be perfect if this actually happens. I think when this happens, it will lead to Madame Shirley's prophecy of Fishman Island being obliterated by Luffy.
What's up, guys? Sorry to pause the video, but just thought I'd include this in the video. So recently we just learned that there also will be a flood from Vegapunk. He said that somehow the entire world's gonna sink into the earth or sink under the water. And yeah, now that kind of I mean, it doesn't completely change my video, but I think to also add in that sometime within the end of One Piece, we're gonna see an insane flood throughout the entire world, and I think it's only a matter of will it happen before the Mary Joa arc, or will it happen after? And in my opinion, it could go either way. I could see it happening either during or before, right before, and I could see maybe that being also a reason why everyone's raiding Mary Joa. And I can also see it happening after, maybe possibly with like the Red Line going down or something, or maybe Imu just goes crazy and destroys a bunch of islands, and maybe that also causes a flood. But yeah, what do you guys think will happen? How do you guys think the flood will happen too? Like, what will cause it? Will it be the Red Line going down, or will it be a bunch of islands going down? Maybe Imu has some other crazy secret power that we don't know about. Yeah, just thought I'd include that too. And I also do want to add in that I also think this is when the ancient weapons will come into play during the flood, because as we can clearly see, both of them, or at least the ones we know as of right now, both of them are ships with the Sea Kings. It seems like the Sea Kings' ultimate purpose is to carry the Noah around, and although we don't really know what Pluton is, we do know that it is a ship, so I'm pretty sure that has something to do with the flood. And yeah, what do you guys think about that? I think the Noah will obviously be used, you know, like Noah's Ark in the flood, or obviously to be used to probably take the entire world's population into there and sail it around while the entire flood is happening. But yeah, just let me know what you guys think about the flood. This kind of is random because I was not expecting this, and I obviously would have added in the video if I learned about this before recording and before writing the script. But yeah, just let me know what you guys think, and now I think it's time to head to Raftel Ark, so yeah.
Once all of this happens, once the Red Line is destroyed, once the Celestial Dragon's reign is over, once Blackbeard is defeated, I think this will officially be the dawn. We see countless of One Piece characters bringing up some future dawn of the world, and I think it's the era where the Sun God frees everyone. It seems to be the era that comes after the world is overturned, and when there is a great change to the world. I think the dawn is also the era where the Sun God's dream becomes a reality, which leads me to the next arc, Raftel. So for Raftel, I think this arc really just depends on who ends up surviving the Mary Joa War. If Blackbeard dies, then I don't think he'll be a part of this arc. Same thing with Shanks. On the other hand, I know for a fact that Buggy ain't dying, so I think that Crossguild will probably be a part of it. I think this arc will end up being a race to see who gets to Raftel first. Just like how Buggy said, Finders Keepers is the only rule with treasure, Crossguild and the Straw Hats will be on a race to Raftel. Of course, if Shanks survives, he'll also be in this scenario. However, I think most people think he's gonna die, so let's cut him out of it for now. I think everyone who goes will end up getting there at the same time. At this point in the story, literally no one will be stronger than Luffy, so I think Buggy will have something up his sleeve to get the One Piece. I think instead of fighting each other to get the One Piece, I think Buggy will challenge Luffy in a Davy back fight and will make the rules that whoever wins ends up getting the One Piece treasure for themselves. Luffy, being a simple man who cares more about having fun rather than getting treasure, will agree. Nami will probably be furious when she realizes that her dream of becoming a lifetime billionaire is at stake. The Straw Hats could have easily defeated the Cross Guild if they wanted to. I think the main matchups in the Davy Back games will end up being Luffy versus Buggy, Sanji or Vivi versus Croc, Zoro versus Mihawk, Usopp or Jinbei versus Mr. 3, Chopper versus Richie, Sanji versus Alvida, and the list goes on. I think the best part of this arc will be the duel between Zoro and Mihawk. I think the two of them will agree on having a matchup to see who the better swordsman is. I think this will be the moment Zoro defeats Mihawk and accomplishes his dream. I also want to point out that I see Mihawk being Zoro's final fight in One Piece because that's his dream. I also don't see how Zoro could even stand a chance against Mihawk until the very end, since at the very moment, he'd probably get two-shotted by Shanks. I think the only way Zoro could defeat Mihawk is at the very end, once he gets insane power-ups after the final war. I also find it interesting that Zoro's dream contains a final matchup while Luffy's technically doesn't. Luffy's dream is to become king of the pirates, and sure, you would think he'd have to defeat the strongest pirates in order to do that, but there's nothing that says you have to. Buggy being Luffy's final matchup could work, since there's nothing in Luffy's story that says his final matchup has to be Emu or Blackbeard. However, unlike Luffy, Zoro's final fight pretty much has to be Mihawk, which is why I find it perfect that they face Cross Guild at Raftel. I think that the Straw Hats will barely win the fight and it'll go down to Luffy and Buggy. I wouldn't be surprised if Buggy ends up using every trick up his sleeve throughout the Davy Back to win. He'd probably borderline cheat just like Foxy. Knowing how Nami already knows Buggy, she'd probably be the main one arguing against his tactics. Now, once the Straw Hats win, I think Cross Guild will also see the One Piece with them, but just won't be able to claim it. Nami will definitely keep her eye on Buggy, as he'll definitely try to steal some of it. Vivi will probably keep her eye on Croc for obvious reasons. I think there will be a vast treasure laid out in the middle of the island. I think after everyone goes crazy over the treasure, they all read the tale that made Roger laugh. Robin might have to read it out loud, as it might be written in the Poneglyph language. This might be the real Poneglyph and the true history to everything. As this happens, I think it'll cut out to a long flashback of Joy Boy. I think Oda will show us the entire tale of Joy Boy. I think it's gonna be a long one, kind of like Odin's, maybe even longer. I mean, we've waited thousands of chapters to get here, so I wouldn't be surprised if Oda takes half a year on it. I honestly really wouldn't mind that. I actually hope the Joy Boy flashback is long. This is where we'd probably learn what Oden calls the entire truth of the world. Once the flashback cuts back to the Straw Hats, we'll see everyone laughing in tears. Buggy will be laughing and crying because he thinks to himself, this is what Roger saw. If Shanks survives, he and Buggy will have a moment with each other after remembering the good old days of Roger. They would have finally seen what everyone else saw after all these years. Luffy will probably be laughing a ton like Roger and will probably accomplish the dream that he, Roger, and the previous Joy Boy had. Whatever dream Luffy has, I think it'll happen after this. Now, for the treasure of the One Piece, I personally think that it's gonna be a bronze statue of Joy Boy, a bronze statue of Luffy, a bunch of golden riches, and Bink's actual sake. If you want to see why I think that, then click on this almost 2-year-old theory of mine back on Preach's channel. Even to this day, I can say it aged well.